So I know we've all often heard the phrase, if you're not paying for a product, then you are not the customer, you are the product. I know that one's been repeated kind of ad nauseum at this point, but it is true. Companies like Meta make bank. They make almost 100% of their income off of advertising in some form, whether that is selling ad space on their websites or applications, or whether that is harvesting your data by tracking your behavior so that they can sell that to private companies. Companies need to keep you coming back, or even better, never leaving, so they can continue to show you ads and monitor your behaviors so later they can show you even more specialized ads. To do that, they use mysterious algorithms so that they can grab your attention, hook us, and keep us from clicking away. Now, this certainly benefits them, but what about us? Now, we know our attention spans have shortened over the years since these new technologies have been implemented, but as the smart world marches forward with every new innovation, what can we really do? Today, I'm talking about 5 things you need to keep in mind to take back your attention and cultivate some discipline around these technologies. Let's get into it. So starting with the first strategy, you have to master your phone. Back when I wasn't thinking about this stuff and I was pretty addicted to my smartphone, it kind of felt like the smartphone was pulling the strings and I was just its puppet. We pick it up constantly whenever it beckons, and we can even feel its tug when it's in our pockets. So the first thing that we can do to take back our attention is look at how we relate to the smartphone as a tool. Look at what works and what you like about it, and then think about the things that you don't so much like about it, the things that aren't really working. Then next you want to work on addressing those things. When smartphones were first coming about, it was kind of the same time that Facebook was actually coming around too, and it wasn't really that divisive and addicting platform that it is today. But what I remember of when the smartphone first came out is that people largely viewed it as a tool, as a digital multi-tool essentially, just had so many useful things built in. Given that it is essentially just a personal computer in your pocket, it can be very useful to be able to quickly connect to the internet to get some information on the fly. The GPS is obviously a very useful function, and of course the camera to be able to take snapshots with the device that you have in your pocket for making calls already is very useful too. But in the years since the smartphone was first introduced, many distracting apps have come out, and it's now really an all-in-one entertainment center and a tool for distraction. And for some people, they really love that, but for me, not so much. I would love the smartphone if it was just kind of an all-in-one personal computer that could just kind of aid me whenever I need it throughout my day. And I think if you start looking at the smartphone through this lens, you can start making the necessary changes to that device to make that a reality. Muting all notifications is a great first step, so you can actually choose to use these applications when you want to use them, not when they've decided to poke you with a notification to try to drag you in. Now, turning the phone to grayscale can also be quite beneficial because it's a lot less enticing to scroll when you're scrolling in black and white. Deleting problem apps can also be very helpful, instead choosing to access those maybe on something like a home computer or even not at all. I've also just found benefits from putting problem apps into a secondary folder, labeling it something like brain poison, so that when you actually go to click that, you first of all have just another click in between you and that distracting thing, and then you also have to go through a folder called brain poison, and that never feels good. Lastly, you can just leave your smartphone at home when you go out sometimes. I think we've gotten so comfortable with these devices being with us that we get very uncomfortable at the thought of them being taken away, even for a brief moment. Now, I have often left all of my devices at home when I went out to do some errands, and I can tell you it is a refreshing and beneficial experience, and I recommend doing it at least once in a while. And leaving our devices at home, putting some sort of distance between us and our devices, it brings me to point number 2, which is get your phone out of the room. When you're trying to get some important work done, the last thing you need is a distracting device trying to pull you away from doing that. Even with all of my notifications turned off, I sometimes do feel that pull to just check something. And folks, this can be really troubling. The Center for Humane Technology estimates that it takes about 23 minutes to fully regain focus once you've lost it and gotten off track with something else. This really highlights the importance of guarding your focus and your attention, because it's not so easy to just pop out into an app and check a notification and then get back to work as we may think that it is. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I like to keep my phone with all the notifications silenced and on Do Not Disturb, but even just having the phone nearby can be enticing on its own, and most of of us are entertainment addicts after all, and it's about time that we came to grips with that. So get the smartphone out of the room when you're working. Put it in a drawer somewhere or leave it in another room on charge. Keeping the phone out of the room while you're working, it still allows you to have access to that tool whenever you need it, but you're not constantly being distracted by being always connected to the net. Now, some people give me flack in the comments for this. They tell me that I just need to have more discipline and that the people that I'm speaking to, I guess, need to have more discipline. They need to have an iron will and be able to kind of face that barrage of constant notifications and all else and stay steadfast. But I argue that we don't need to have these endlessly stimulating tools on our physical body at all times in order to be disciplined in any way. The smartphone's only been around for like 15 years. They didn't evolve with humanity. These are things that we're still trying to learn and understand to kind of come to a good balance with these tools. So I argue that strategies like the ones that I'm offering here is cultivating that discipline. So with that being said, let's move on to strategy number 3, which is fill your time better. So I just did a whole video where I talk about how I fill my time a little bit better than using my smartphone, but we basically just need to find better things to do so that in bored moments, we don't reach to these devices to fill that. Most of the time when I'm really engrossed in a task, I'm not thinking about when I can check my smartphone next. My mind almost enters a kind of flow state where it's just me and the task at hand and pretty much everything else falls away. And I'm not setting some high bar of a task where it's like somebody's dream job where you're so passionate about it that nothing else matters. This could be literally anything. Doing a puzzle book, knitting, drawing a picture, reading a book, even making a YouTube video. Really, it's just a matter of using your time in a way that you're gonna feel better about by the end of the day. Now, I've linked a video above as well where I talk about a few of my favorite ways to do that if you're looking for some ideas. I think most of us go to our devices so often because we're bored and understimulated. And you know, it's often been said that boredom is pretty much extinct in the age of the smartphone. But if we can find things to do that address that boredom better than scrolling Instagram or Reddit or even watching YouTube, then I think we are gonna feel a lot better about it at the end of the day, and we're going to be doing a huge favor to our brains too. Because I imagine doing some sort of personal project or a hobby is like the opposite of using a smartphone for our brains. It's building our focus and attention span back up rather than eroding it. Moving on with that idea of time and how to better use it, the 4th tip is schedule your smartphone use. And honestly, this doesn't just go for your smartphone either. It goes for all of your devices, especially the distracting ones. Setting a schedule for how and when you use these technologies can put some structure into your relationship with them so they're not leeching your time and attention throughout the day. An example would be, okay, I'm gonna give myself between 8 and 8:30 in the morning to look at whatever I want on the internet, be it Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, whatever. And then I'm also going to give myself an hour at night, maybe between 7:30 and 8:30 to do the same. Now, this gives you plenty of time to use the internet for your pleasure. And perhaps when you think about that time spent, you wouldn't even want to give that much time up for that purpose. But it's a controlled blast, let's call it. It's certainly a lot better than just letting it rip and using your phone 6 hours a day. And you can and should take this even further. Like using the previous tip of taking your phone and putting it out of the room while you're working, you could set 5 minutes per hour where you could go to your phone and you could check if you have any notifications, you could check your email, do whatever you want for that 5 minutes, but then for the other 55, you're doing work. Putting structure like this around how you use your smartphone, it keeps you from overusing the device, but it also doesn't make you feel entirely deprived of it either. And finally, folks, tip number 5 is to opt for more single-use devices. Now, this is the final option because it honestly should be the last resort. You should use what you have first and try to make do with those tools because the smartphone really gives you infinite possibilities and you can cut it back to as little features as you want. But if you find that you don't need the smartphone entirely, you can outsource those things to single purpose items. Now, I do call these single use devices, but they are probably more aptly called single purpose devices. We're talking things like an iPod for a music player, things like a digicam for photography, and then things like a dumb phone for a more stripped down phone. Now, if you take this approach and use something like a dumb phone, you are going to lose a lot of the features that you would find in something like a smartphone and a lot of the helpful ones as well. Things like a GPS or even a camera for doing QR code scanning, those might not be present in that single-use device. But the single-purpose device approach doesn't have to be incompatible with using a smartphone either. Just like how I use a typewriter or an Alpha Smart for distraction-free writing, you can utilize some of these single-purpose devices with your smart devices for a more mediated approach to the smart world, taking some of the best stuff from the past and marrying it with the best offerings of the present. The single-purpose device also allows you to go somewhere and just bring one of those tools with you rather than bringing absolutely everything as you would with a smartphone, which some people may find to be quite helpful. But at the end of the day, folks, the solution is going to be personalized to you. You don't have to shun all modern technology, go back to the 1800s and have a carrier pigeon doing your messaging for you. And folks, I will leave you with this. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can take the middle way approach to tech and get the modern benefits without the distraction. It just requires some good strategy. And that's it for today, folks. I hope you found this video interesting. What strategies do you use to get the most from your technology without letting it get the most from you? Let me know in the comments section. I would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.